We have news from a coronavirus vaccine trial that I am going to call the best possible news at this stage of the vaccine development process. There's been a lot of articles in the last 12, 16, 18 hours saying this is miraculous news or this is tremendous news or fantastic. Less than sort of adding an adjective to it in that way. What we can say is knowing the development process of a vaccine, which we'll talk about momentarily, this is essentially as good as it gets at this stage in the process. We have a phase 1 trial which achieved 100% immunity. 100% meaning protective antibodies were the result in every person who received the doses with limited side effects. This is early in the process, but at this stage, this is the best possible result. Let's look at the details. The manufacturer of this vaccine is Moderna. They've already safety tested the vaccine. This was a phase 1 trial for efficacy. Does it work at protecting someone? And indeed, the first 25 people got either 25 or 100 milligram doses. All of them had antibody levels at or greater than the antibody levels of people who get coronavirus and recover from it naturally. They did a second round where 8 more people received doses. The vaccine again elicited neutralizing antibodies in all 8 of those participants at or above the levels of the antibodies that someone who, again, has had the virus, recovers naturally. You have a certain level of antibodies. The vaccine elicited that level of antibodies or greater. And then those 8 people's antibodies then were able to defeat the virus in a test tube. So this is very, very big news. Now, in terms of side effects, of that second group of 8 participants, 1 person had what's called grade 3 adverse events in terms of side effects. That grade 3 is pretty serious. Your daily activity is markedly reduced with grade 3. They're considered severe side effects. You usually need some assistance as a result of the side effects. You usually need some kind of medical intervention and sometimes hospitalization. That was with the higher dose. They've determined they don't need the higher dose to generate enough antibodies. So that is an important thing as well. What else can we say about this? You still have to sort out that there's a lot that still needs to be sorted out, but this is very, very important in terms of getting on the way to a vaccine on the fastest possible schedule. Now, there's a lot of different important things that we have to discuss. There's a general scientific advancement that this vaccine represents because this is finally we'll call it potentially successful for now until it's widely approved for mass use. We'll call it's a potentially successful mRNA vaccine. Now, this is a whole new type of vaccine. Most vaccines that we have right now for other diseases use either inactivated or weakened doses of the disease you're trying to protect against to generate the antibody response. This type of vaccine from Moderna for coronavirus, it's an mRNA vaccine. It works on a completely different method by tricking the body into producing specific viral proteins rather than introducing weakened versions of the virus into the human body. There can be much more powerful immunity generated by this type of vaccine, and it can also be much more straightforward to produce, which is a really important part of this. And so we should talk about production of the vaccine a little bit. One of the key things in vaccine production when it's urgent, right now we have an urgent situation. Getting this vaccine 1 month earlier could save a lot of people, and it could keep a lot of people out of the hospital. So one of the things that comes up when you have an urgent vaccine development is if you wait until you have all phases of testing finished before you start producing it, you're way behind because it takes a long time to produce huge numbers of doses. We are talking here about billions of total doses that would need to be produced for the planet. Of course, you'll likely have more than one company. The Moderna vaccine is unlikely to be the vaccine for the whole planet, but you still need to produce hundreds of millions of doses. So what is happening? In partnership with the company Lonza, Moderna is already moving forward on establishing manufacturing capacity for this vaccine, and they're going to start making it in July. Now, this is very important because the phase 3 trial of the drug, of the vaccine, It doesn't start until July. We're about 5 weeks from that. As of right now, they are looking to start making this vaccine while it is still being tested. And this is the fastest way to eventually get it to people if it works. Now, it's a risk, right? You start producing hundreds of millions of doses, maybe phase 3 doesn't go well and you've wasted a bunch of money. That's why in our system, the way we do medicine financially, this represents a risk, but they're doing it. And this is a really, really important thing. They are going to start production in just weeks as the vaccine is still being tested, so that hopefully, if things go well in the fall, you would have some significant number of doses available. Now, here's one of the difficulties that you get to. Phase 3 trial starts in July. It can take about 40, 43, 45 days to generate the full antibody response to prove that this works. That's mid-August already. Then how do you actually prove that it protects you, right? You generate the antibodies in about 40 days, but then you need to make sure that it actually protects you from the disease. Well, normally the way you do it in a phase 3 trial is you follow a huge swath of people for 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year. And then after that time, you would be able to say, hey, only 5% of these people got it, or only, compared to some other portion. That's how you would figure out that it works. But the problem is that when these phase 3 test subjects have the antibodies in mid-August, only a few percent of the country will have been infected. So you could potentially need to observe these people for a really, really long time before you can say, hey, they were infected at a far lower rate than the general population. They didn't not catch it by chance. They didn't catch it because of the vaccine. So what do? Well, there's something called a challenge trial where you take vaccinated people and you deliberately expose them to the virus to see if they get infected. This is not typically done with vaccines. And right now there is no, in phase 3 trials, and right now there's no challenge trial planned. I don't know how else you accelerate phase 3. Normally phase 3 is long, and it means we just follow these people and see if they get the virus. So will there be a challenge trial done so we can more quickly figure out, does the vaccine work for large numbers of people? Hasn't been discussed yet. We don't know. So based on all of that, the soonest that we might have limited availability of this vaccine, if everything goes perfectly, would be sometime in the fall. It would probably be for healthcare workers initially. Then later you would get to the most vulnerable populations. Then significantly later, you would potentially have the capacity for everybody. But this is excellent news insofar as at this stage, this is the best you can hope for. 100% immunity and limited side effects only with that higher dose, which it turns out we don't actually need. Now what we need to prepare for is the flood of vaccine disinformation. That's what I want to talk about next.